All right, welcome to part two. So, yeah, just go back here and recap just a little bit. So again, 920, this is the topic. Daniel praying about the sin of the people. So everything here about the sin of the people. So when this covenant has to do with the sin of the people, the only person that's capable of making a covenant for the remission of sins is Christ Himself, the Messiah. Nobody else is capable of doing that. So it's something to keep in mind. So here's the subject. So now the basic grammar suggests that he here goes back to the subject. And so this prince here, it's the same prince here. Messiah here, the same Messiah as here. So just so hopefully you'll begin to see how this verse is strategically placed the way it is, because it's actually pointing out, if you go through it chronologically, it's actually carrying out him as the role of prince from this side, the left side where it said prince, to the right side. And I'll go over that in a little bit here. So yeah, so let's just go to the simplified chart. So after 62 week Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. But for who? For these people right here. And he came for his own, and his own received him not. Alrighty. So we go over here. Came to his own; those were his own, did not receive him, and they cried out, "We have no king but Caesar." Right. So after Jesus was cut off, he had ascended. So we go over here. He experienced an ascension. This is Acts 1:6-11. Okay. So let's see here. So when we said these things that they were looking on, he was lifted up, okay, in a cloud, took them out of their sight. So we go here. Behold us the clouds of heaven, more like the Son of Man is coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, going back up, and was presented for him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and kingdom. Okay, so now he had dominion, control, ruler. Alrighty, so he ascends up, and so the people had already cried out, "We have no king but Caesar." So now he's up, and so now he's at dominion. And so we go to Romans 11, which is about 18 years later, or 28 years later. What then? Now, by this point, the gospel has been fully preached. There's a couple passages in Romans where Paul said the gospel has been fully preached. And there's also in Colossians chapter 1, verses 5 and 6, and Colossians chapter 1, verses 23. Verse 23. So Colossians was written probably more around 60 AD. So by this point, the gospel has been fully preached. Alrighty. What Israel was seeking had not obtained, but those who were chosen obtained it. So those who were hearing the gospel and chosen, they came to Christ, and the rest were hardened. Alrighty. So what does entail? Those heart. It's referring to the heart. So those who are chosen, they experience circumcision of the heart when you become born again, and the rest, they just Christ just let them go in their hearts. Alrighty. So if we look at Exodus, where Pharaoh, God creates a miracle and basically let go of Pharaoh's heart, and so by him creating a miracle, he was hardening his heart, but ultimately it was Pharaoh that was hardening his own heart. Alrighty. So the same thing here. So the Jews, we harden our own hearts. Alrighty. And so that's due to sin and whatnot. And so now these people here, they said, "We have no king but Caesar." So Jesus hands them over to Caesar. All right, those are your only two options: either you worship Christ or you worship Caesar. And so obviously they chose Caesar. And so who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So by the time, this is written around 58 AD, okay, and it's evident that they're being hardened, okay. So later on, then Nero's in power, Caesar, and around 66 AD when they stopped that was when the Jewish revolt occurred, and people are becoming very wicked people. Obviously the ones that came to Christ, that's a different story. But 66 AD, they stopped with the animal sacrifices, August 66 AD, and so that's the wing abomination. So it goes from the cross to August 66 AD, And then after that, shortly, then Nero, he ticked off by it. Josephus said, "This is the start of the war. We should go over here to the original, to the other, to main, the end of 70 weeks." It talks about right here in the left column, okay, below the chapter 9, okay. So that was beginning the war, but they also weren't paying their taxes, and I guess they just had an attitude towards Caesar. Nero, which is not a good idea. He was nicknamed Beast in the Day for a reason. He was a bad guy. He would put animal skins on Christians and have animals eat them up. He would put oil on them, have them burn. He was just a really bad guy. Alrighty. So anyway, so he ticked off. He ordered Titus. This is in February of 67 AD. 42 months later, August 70 AD, the temple was decimated. So some people say, well, now Jesus said, "Not one stone left upon another," but there were still some stones. They're talking about the temple buildings. That was completely decimated. Which, by the way, once that's decimated, you cannot rebuild the same temple. Like Herod temple was rebuilt, or Solomon temple. But yeah, you have to start from scratch, and of course you do that, then you're rejecting the temple that God's making right now, the living temple. So anyway, so they take Nero off. Nero ordered the destruction of the city, so they brought upon themselves. They're just that wicked, and so that's what's going on here, in the sense that he's prince, he's ruler, he's allowing their heart to harden. He has the authority to do that, to execute judgment, all judgment given to the Son. Okay, just like it was back in the ancient days. Okay. Um, with Pharaoh and so forth. Alrighty. And so go here to the city. If we go to late 69 AD. Okay. Yeah, so you can see here, Romans resumed Operation Judea, methodically took control of the countryside, and Jerusalem was surrounded. They marched, and Jerusalem was surrounded. Okay, so just like Jesus said, know that when you see the Jerusalem surrounded by army, know your desolation near. Okay, and he also said, "Let the reader understand." Referring back to Daniel's prophecy. And he also said, "Pray your flight not take place in winter." Okay, so this is late 69 AD, so they're praying. But during that time, when the man stood in the temple of God, and so based on Daniel 12, I go over this in the video. When did the man stand in the temple of God? God actually told him back in the book of Daniel that when you see the man stand in the temple of God, basically count 45 days. Okay, so there's 1290 days. And then it mentions the full more of a greater number of days. When you calculate the difference, 45-day difference. So the moment the man starts staying in the temple of God, now the 1290 days when they're it's coming, 3.5 years, whatever. And so and then being a 45 days, the man stood in the temple of God. 45 days later, they had to get the heck out of there. And sure as heck, and that brings it to March. Okay, and it was April 70 80, the very next month when the siege began, and that is what's referred to as the flood. Okay, so the end of it shall be with the flood. You go to Daniel 9:26. The end of it shall be with the flood. Let's go to a simpler version. The end of it shall be with the flood. Okay, that's the siege, and that's where the Roman soldiers, they were going after the gold and the precious metals. And I don't know if they were competing each other or what, but they just stormed through like a flood. They're just slaughtering everybody, slicing their throats, and the women and children. So that was from April of 70 AD to August 70 AD. Alrighty. And with the end of the war, desolation is determined. That's what, like I told you earlier, they're praying, determined, and they're told about the 45 days. It doesn't say 45 days. You have to calculate the two numbers, okay? And that's when they headed out. So, yeah, so in that sense, it was determined. So anyway, hope this makes sense to you. And then, yeah, I think so. The ancient days, it brings you to this. Not sure if I already covered this with you, but yeah, this is just something that a lot of Christians just refuse to study. So this is basically back in the Old Covenant, the Old Testament history, the Jewish background and history. I give you passages pertaining to judgment coming, and so each passage I give you, I'll highlight the verse in red. They're specifically to a judgment coming, so you can look that up yourself. So yeah, then that naturally relates to the question. Well, gee, what about the sign of Son of Man in the sky? So we'll go to that. So you go to Matthew 24. So there are two parts to this. This is part one that you see here. So I gave you a whole bunch of Old Testament passages that helps you kind of read their mind, their background, their history. And that's what makes the Bible unique. That you read a conversation they're having, you don't understand it, you just go back to the Old Testament. Oh, I can read your mind now. So it's kind of cool. So go to part two, and this is the timeline 30 AD to 70 AD, what really happened. And so this is the sign of the Son of Man right here. Alrighty, this is the same chart that you saw earlier. So Joseph's words 653. So you go to 653, 6 in chapter 5, and then paragraph 3. Alrighty. So a certain prodigious and incredible phenomenon appeared. I suppose the kind would seem to be a fable, were it not related by those that saw it. So he's trying to tell you, I'm not crazy. I already saw this. And were not the event that followed it of so considerable nature to deserve such signals. For before sun setting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about among the clouds and surrounding of cities. Moreover, that feast, which we call Pentecost. Okay, so you can read it. So basically, this is God's way of telling them that this is no coincidence. This is a judgment. Alrighty, this is judgment by God. And similarly, Tacitus history 513. There have been seen hosts joining battle in the skies. Okay, so illuminated by sun radiant clouds. Okay, so this was the sign of the Son of Man. Alrighty, that they're talking about. So that you were familiar with this. Unfortunately, most Christians are not familiar with this, and unfortunately, just not willing to take the time to study it. So anyway, trying to think what else. Yeah. And the Jews then said to him, what sign do you show us your authority for doing these things? They understood what Jesus was telling them, what Jesus was telling them when he said destroy the temple, that I'm the Messiah, the Prince. Okay, that the ruler aspect of him, Prince, has the authority to do so. Alrighty, and so how do you do that? By right here. It's one of the ways he's doing it anyway. I'm sure. There are probably things that are not mentioned in Scripture that we don't need to know behind the scenes they have to do. I don't know. But anyway, by the temple being destroyed, they knew that he was the Messiah by seeing the sign of the sky. And I think even Josephus said that it's possible that when they were seeing the chariot, that Christ himself is up there. So you can imagine, these people who rejected Christ, and then they know him by faith, and they see him up there. That had been, pretty terrifying. So yeah. Anyway, so it begs the question: did he destroy the temple directly? No, he just simply let them go, and their hearts were hardened, and it resulted in taking off Caesar, and Caesar in return ordered to have it destroyed. So they did it upon themselves. So anyway, hope that makes sense. And now hopefully you'll see you don't have to dodge around the grammar anymore. You can see here that this Messiah the Prince is the same Messiah the Prince here, so that he here is the subject, still the subject. Alrighty. So hope you have a great day. And lastly, I want to say, hopefully now you see that this Prince here is not an X value where we can just fill in whatever we think it is. That X value has already been filled in right here. Just following basic rules of grammar. Alrighty. So you have a great day.